Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but for my sister, it wasn't thicker than a platinum credit card. When she banned me from her extravagant baby shower for being too poor, I thought I'd lost my family forever. Then, her billionaire mother-in-law called me with a devastating secret. For as long as I can remember, there were two distinct realities in our household: Audrey's world and mine. Audrey was the golden child, blessed with my mother's striking high cheekbones and a natural charisma that could manipulate a saint. She was groomed for a life of luxury we didn't actually possess. My parents, Robert and Patricia, were middle-class hardware store owners in a modest Chicago suburb, but if you looked at Audrey's wardrobe, you'd think we lived on the Upper East Side. I am Samantha. I'm 2 years older, infinitely more practical, and completely invisible when my sister is in the room. I never resented Audrey for being beautiful, but I did resent how my parents went into credit card debt to buy her designer prom dresses while I worked weekend shifts at a diner to pay for my own nursing school textbooks. I chose a life of service, becoming a pediatric oncology nurse. It was grueling, heartbreaking, but deeply fulfilling work. My scrubs and sensible clogs, however, were a constant source of embarrassment to my sister. Everything shifted from bad to unbearable 3 years ago when Audrey met Preston Kensington. The Kensingtons are the kind of wealthy that don't need to flaunt designer logos because their name is on the hospital wings and university libraries. Preston was a trust fund golden boy with a charming smile and a startling lack of street smarts. Audrey sunk her perfectly manicured claws into him and never let go. Within a year, she had the 6-carat diamond, the extravagant wedding in Lake Como, which I was only allowed to attend as a guest, not a bridesmaid, because my off-the-rack dress wouldn't match her aesthetic and a brand new personality. She completely erased her middle-class upbringing, morphing into a terrifying, status-obsessed socialite. Then came the pregnancy, the Kensington heir. The moment Audrey announced she was carrying Preston's child, the frenzy began. The baby shower wasn't just a celebration, it was a highly orchestrated PR event. Magazines were going to be there. High society matriarchs were flying in from London and Paris. For months, it was all my mother could talk about. Patricia spent every waking moment helping Audrey pick out imported Italian silk for the drapery of the nursery and complaining about how stressed her poor, darling Audrey was. I stayed on the periphery, working double shifts at the hospital, but I saved up. I wanted to give my future nephew something meaningful. I found a beautiful, handcrafted, antique wooden rocking horse from the 1920s. It cost me nearly a month's rent, but it was sturdy, timeless, and completely unique. I painstakingly restored the leather saddle myself in my tiny apartment living room. A week before the shower, my phone rang. It was Audrey. "Sam," she began, her voice dripping with that fake, breathy tone she adopted around Preston's friends. "We need to talk about next Saturday." "I know," I smiled, wiping wood stain off my hands with a rag. "I'm so excited. I just finished the gift. It's beautiful, Audrey. I really think you're going to love." "Yeah, about that." She cut me off, her tone dropping its artificial warmth, turning as cold as ice. "I've been thinking, and I really don't think it's a good idea for you to come." I froze. "What? Audrey, it's your baby shower. I'm your sister." "Let's be real, Samantha," she sighed, sounding profoundly irritated. "This isn't some backyard barbecue with paper plates. This is an exclusive event at the Kensington Country Club. The valet line is going to be full of Bentleys and Maybachs. What are you going to do, roll up in your dented 2014 Subaru? It's embarrassing." A heavy knot formed in my stomach. "I can take an Uber, Audrey." "It's not just the car," she snapped. "It's times you, your hair, your clothes, your complete lack of sophistication. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, has invited some of the most powerful women in the city. Women who wear Chanel to walk their dogs. You can't afford our circle, Sam. You won't fit in. You'll just sit in the corner looking like a charity case, and I'll have to spend the whole afternoon explaining why my sister looks like she buys her clothes by the pound." Tears stung my eyes, blurring the wood grain of the beautiful rocking horse in front of me. "Audrey, I'm your blood. Does that mean nothing to you?" "Don't be dramatic," she scoffed. "Mom understands. She agrees with me, actually. We both think it's better if you just sit this one out. You'd be miserable anyway. Just mail the gift to the estate. Bye, Sam." The line went dead. I stood in my tiny, cramped apartment, staring at my phone. The betrayal cut deeper than I could ever articulate. I called my mother, praying Audrey was lying. "Oh, Sammy." My mother sighed when I asked her. "Don't make a big fuss out of this. You know how Audrey is right now. Her hormones are everywhere, and the Kensingtons are very intimidating people. She's just trying to protect her image. Let her have her day. It's easier for everyone this way." Easier for everyone except me. I had been discarded, written out of my own family's history because I didn't fit the color palette. I spent that weekend crying, packing the antique rocking horse into a dark closet, resolving to finally cut my toxic sister and enabling parents out of my life. I thought that was the end of the story. I thought I would quietly fade into the background, just like Audrey wanted. But 3 days before the baby shower, my phone rang again. The caller ID displayed a blocked, private number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but I was waiting on a call from a specialist at the hospital regarding a patient, so I swiped to accept. "Samantha?" a woman's voice asked. It was sharp, authoritative, and impossibly elegant. Crisp consonants and a polished tone that demanded immediate attention. Speaking. "Who is this?" "This is Beatrice Kensington, Preston's mother." My heart slammed against my ribs. Beatrice Kensington, the formidable matriarch of the family. The woman Audrey was so desperate to impress that she had thrown her own sister away. Why on earth was she calling me? "Mrs. Kensington," I stammered, frantically wiping down my kitchen counter as if she could see through the phone. "Hello. If you're calling about the shower, Audrey already told me." "I know exactly what Audrey told you," Beatrice interrupted, her tone lowering into something dangerously quiet. "And I know what she told me, which is why I need to see you. Today, at 2 p.m. I have a shift at the hospital until— I will have a car waiting outside your hospital at precisely 2:15 p.m., Beatrice stated, leaving zero room for negotiation. "Do not tell your sister about this conversation. I will see you soon, Samantha." The phone clicked. I spent the next few hours at work in an absolute daze. When my shift ended, I walked out of the hospital doors, and sure enough, a sleek black town car was idling by the curb. The driver stepped out, holding a small placard with my name on it. He opened the door, and I slid into the plush leather interior, my stomach doing nervous backflips. I was driven to a discreet, impossibly high-end private tea room downtown. A hostess in a tailored suit immediately escorted me to a private, soundproofed alcove at the back. There sat Beatrice Kensington. She was a stunning woman in her early 60s, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blazer and a string of authentic South Sea pearls. She had silver hair pulled back into a severe chignon and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She looked me up and down as I approached in my slightly wrinkled scrubs and faded sneakers, but to my surprise there was no disgust in her eyes, only a sharp, calculating curiosity. "Sit, Samantha. Would you like Earl Grey or Darjeeling?" she asked smoothly. "Water is fine, thank you," I said, sliding into the velvet chair. "Mrs. Kensington, I don't understand what this is about." Beatrice poured herself a cup of tea with agonizing precision. "Audrey thinks I am a fool, Samantha. She thinks because I have money, I lack the capacity for observation. But I didn't build a real estate empire by being unobservant." I blinked, completely taken aback. "I'm sorry?" "When Preston first brought your sister home, I knew exactly what she was," Beatrice said coolly, taking a delicate sip of her tea. "A social climber, a girl who saw a walking ATM instead of a husband. But my son was hopelessly in love, and I have learned the hard way that forbidding a young man from seeing a woman only makes him marry her faster. So, I played the welcoming mother-in-law. I smiled at the wedding. I paid for the exorbitant honeymoon. I waited for her to show her true colors." She set her teacup down. The porcelain clinked sharply against the saucer. "A few months ago," Beatrice continued, "I noticed significant discrepancies in Preston's trust account, large withdrawals. When I asked him, he became defensive. He said Audrey needed the money to support her financially ruined family, namely, a severely troubled, drug-addicted sister who was bleeding your parents dry." My jaw dropped. The air rushed out of my lungs. She said, "Times what?" According to Audrey, Beatrice's eyes locked onto mine. "You are a deeply disturbed addict." She told Preston, and me, that you have been stealing from your parents for years to fund your habit. She claimed that she and Preston had to quietly pay off your parents' mortgage just to keep a roof over their heads because of your reckless behavior. It was the perfect sob story to excuse why hundreds of thousands of dollars were suddenly vanishing into Audrey's private accounts. I felt physically sick. My hands began to shake with a mixture of profound rage and utter devastation. Mrs. Kensington, I am a pediatric oncology nurse. I work 60 hours a week. I have never touched a drug in my life. And my parents. I times am the one who has been secretly paying a portion of their mortgage for the last 3 years because they went into crushing debt buying Audrey her designer clothes and cars. I know, Beatrice said softly. The sudden gentleness in her voice almost made me cry. I hired a private investigator, Samantha, 2 weeks ago. I have a complete dossier on your sister, your parents, and you. I know about the mortgage payments. I know about your pristine work record. I also know where Audrey's money has actually been going. Where? I whispered. Secret offshore accounts. Designer jewelry she claims are gifts from friends. And, most disgustingly, a luxury condo downtown that she purchased under a shell company, presumably as a backup plan, or a place to conduct affairs. My daughter-in-law is siphoning my son's wealth, preparing a golden parachute while smearing your name to cover her tracks. I leaned back in the chair, my mind spinning. The sheer audacity of Audrey's lies was staggering. She hadn't just uninvited me because I was poor. She uninvited me because if I showed up to the shower, sane, sober, and stable, her entire house of cards would instantly collapse. She told me. I choked out, tears of anger finally spilling over, that she didn't want me at the baby shower because my clothes were too cheap, because my car was too old, because I would embarrass her in front of you. Beatrice let out a dark, elegant scoff. You? Embarrass me? Samantha, you spend your days holding the hands of dying children. You are a woman of immense character. Your sister couldn't buy a shred of your dignity if she emptied my entire bank account. Beatrice reached across the table and placed her manicured hand over my shaking one. Audrey believes she has outsmarted us all, Beatrice murmured, a dangerous, thrilling glint in her eyes. She believes this baby shower will be her ultimate triumph, her coronation into high society. What are you going to do? I asked, my voice trembling. Beatrice smiled, and it was a terrifying, beautiful thing to witness. No, Samantha. The question is, what are we going to do? Because you are not sitting at home on Saturday. You are coming to that baby shower, and you are going to be the guest of honor. The next 48 hours were a blur of calculated, tactical preparation. Beatrice Kensington didn't just want to expose my sister. She wanted to orchestrate a masterpiece of social destruction. She insisted on outfitting me for the shower, not to mask my middle-class roots, but to frame my natural dignity in a way that Audrey's shallow circle couldn't ignore. We are not turning you into one of them, Beatrice told me, as a private tailor adjusted the hem of a breathtaking, understated emerald green silk sheath dress in her penthouse. We are simply removing Audrey's ability to dismiss you based on optics. When you walk into that room, they will see a woman of substance. The dress is just the armor. She also had her driver swing by my tiny apartment to pick up the antique wooden rocking horse I had restored. A true heirloom, Beatrice had murmured, tracing the polished wood with genuine appreciation. This is a gift from a woman who understands value. Audrey only understands price tags. We will make sure this sits front and center. Saturday arrived with a crisp, mocking sunshine. I rode with Beatrice in the back of her chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I was terrified, yes, but beneath the fear was a simmering, undeniable sense of righteous vindication. For years, I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace. I had let my parents prioritize Audrey's delusions over my reality. Today, the bill was coming due. We pulled up to the Kensington Country Club. It was a sprawling, opulent estate with manicured lawns, marble fountains, and a valet line choked with imported luxury cars. Just as Audrey had predicted, my dented Subaru would have been a laughingstock here. Beatrice linked her arm through mine. Head high, Samantha. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and she has everything to lose. We walked through the gilded double doors and into the solarium. The room was a suffocating explosion of pastel pinks, gold leaf accents, and towers of imported white roses. Waiters in crisp tuxedos circulated with silver trays of sparkling water and delicate hors d'oeuvres. The room was packed with women dripping in diamonds, all laughing in that synchronized, breathless way wealthy socialites do. Across the room, holding court on a velvet-tufted sofa, was Audrey. She wore a custom-made blush maternity gown that probably cost more than my annual salary. Preston, looking handsome but tired, stood faithfully by her side. My parents, Robert and Patricia, were hovering awkwardly near the dessert table, looking both overwhelmingly proud and deeply out of place. Then, Audrey looked up. Her gaze landed on Beatrice first, a bright, rehearsed smile stretching across her perfectly contoured face. But as her eyes slid slightly to the right and locked onto me, the smile shattered. I watched the blood literally drain from her face. Her grip on her crystal goblet tightened so fiercely, I thought the glass might snap. The silence that rippled through the room was palpable as Beatrice and I walked confidently across the marble floor. "Beatrice!" Audrey choked out, standing up too quickly and swaying slightly. You brought a guest." "I did," Beatrice said, her voice carrying effortlessly over the quiet murmurs of the crowd. "I believe you know Samantha, though perhaps not as well as you should." My mother, Patricia, rushed over, her face a mask of panic and confusion. "Samantha? What on earth are you doing here? Audrey said you were unwell, that you were at a clinic." I stared at my mother, the woman who had birthed me, feeling a cold detachment replace the years of desperate longing for her approval. "A clinic, Mom? Is that what she told you?" "I was working a 12-hour shift at the children's hospital yesterday." Preston stepped forward, his brow furrowed in deep confusion. "Samantha? Audrey told me you were in rehab in Arizona. She said we had to wire $30,000 just to keep you in the facility this month." The collective gasp from the surrounding women was audible. "Preston, sweetheart," Audrey interrupted, her voice shrill, a frantic edge to her tone. She grabbed his arm, her carefully manicured nails digging into his suit jacket. "She's lying. You know how addicts lie. She probably manipulated your mother into bringing her here to make a scene and beg for cash. We need to have security remove her." Audrey lunged forward, grabbing my forearm, her voice dropping to a vicious, desperate hiss intended only for my ears. "I don't know how you did this, but get out. Get out right now before I ruin you." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up to her terrified, furious eyes. I didn't whisper. I spoke at a perfectly normal, carrying volume. "You can't ruin me, Audrey," I said calmly, gently prying her fingers off my silk sleeve. "Because unlike you, I actually built my life on something real." Beatrice stepped to the center of the room, tapping a silver spoon against a crystal champagne flute. The sharp ringing cut through the tension like a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beatrice announced, projecting her voice with the authority of a seasoned CEO. "If I could have your attention. Today, we are gathered to celebrate the upcoming arrival of my grandchild, a child who carries the Kensington name, a name built on legacy, integrity, and truth." The room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the marble floor. "When my son married Audrey," Beatrice continued, pacing slowly, her eyes locking onto my sister, she spun a very compelling narrative. She painted herself as the savior of a financially destitute family, burdened by a tragically addicted sister who was draining their parents' resources. A sister whose life was so chaotic, she couldn't even be trusted to attend this beautiful shower. Beatrice gestured toward me. "Allow me to introduce the phantom addict, Samantha, a pediatric oncology nurse with a spotless record, zero history of substance abuse, and a credit score that, frankly, put some of our trust fund friends to shame." Murmurs erupted across the room. My father, Robert, finally stepped forward, looking utterly bewildered. "Audrey, what is she talking about? You told us Samantha was too embarrassed by her financial struggles to come today." "Wait," I interjected, looking at my parents. "Mom, Dad, how do you think your mortgage is getting paid?" "Audrey pays it," my mother said defensively, though her voice wavered. "She and Preston have been so generous since the hardware store started struggling." "I pay it," I corrected, my voice cracking slightly with the weight of the betrayal. "I have been routing $1,000 from every paycheck into a blind trust that the bank applies to your mortgage. Audrey hasn't given you a dime." Preston looked like he had been struck by lightning. He turned to his wife, his face pale. "Audrey, I've been transferring $15,000 a month to your private account for your parents' mortgage and Samantha's rehab. Where has that money been going?" Audrey was hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face, the perfect makeup smudging into a chaotic mess. "Preston, Please, they're lying. They're teaming up against me because they're jealous. Beatrice calmly reached into her designer handbag and produced a thick, leather-bound folder. She handed it directly to her son. Page 4 details the offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Beatrice instructed smoothly. Page 7 shows the deed to a $3 million luxury penthouse downtown, purchased 3 months ago under a shell corporation registered in Audrey's maiden name. Page 12 contains the receipts for roughly $400,000 in unverified jewelry purchases. She wasn't saving her family, Preston. She was embezzling from you. Preston opened the folder, his eyes scanning the documents. The color drained completely from his face. He looked at the bank statements, the deed, the private investigator's photographs. His hands began to shake. He looked up at Audrey, the woman carrying his child, and the expression in his eyes shifted from confusion to absolute, shattering heartbreak. Preston. Audrey sobbed, reaching for him. Preston, I just wanted to be secure. I grew up with nothing. You don't understand what it's like to constantly worry about money. So you stole from me? Preston whispered, stepping back from her touch as if she were radioactive. You siphoned my money, lied about your sister having a drug problem, and manipulated your own parents? What kind of person does that? A person who doesn't belong in our circle, Beatrice said coldly, delivering the final, fatal blow. And certainly not a person I will allow to have unrestricted access to Kensington wealth. The socialites in the room were wide-eyed, whispering furiously to one another. The magazines would have a field day with this. Audrey's meticulously crafted image was disintegrating in real time. She let out a guttural, furious scream, turning her wrath entirely on me. "This is your fault!" she shrieked, lunging at me. "You ruined everything! You were supposed to stay away! You were supposed to stay poor and invisible!" Preston caught her by the waist, pulling her back. "Stop it, Audrey, just stop!" He looked at his mother, completely defeated. "I need to go. I need to get out of here." "The driver is waiting outside, Preston," Beatrice said softly, the fierce matriarch softening for her broken son. As Preston led a hysterical, sobbing Audrey out of the solarium, my parents stood paralyzed. My mother looked at me, tears in her eyes, realizing the magnitude of what she had enabled. Realizing that while she had favored the daughter who dressed in Prada, she had ignored the daughter who was quietly keeping a roof over her head. "Samantha," my father started, taking a step toward me. I held up a hand. "Don't, Dad. Just don't. You believed her. You both did. You didn't even call me to ask if I was actually in rehab. You just took her word for it. Because it was easier to believe Audrey was a saint and I was a failure." I turned to Beatrice. "Thank you. For the dress and for the truth." "You are a remarkable woman, Samantha," Beatrice smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "If you ever need anything, a recommendation for medical school, an investment in a clinic, you have my private number." I walked over to the gift table. Among the towering piles of silver rattles and cashmere blankets wrapped in Tiffany blue ribbons, Beatrice's staff had placed my gift right in the center, the antique, beautifully restored wooden rocking horse. It looked incredibly out of place among the flashy, expensive brands. It looked solid, real. I didn't take it back. I left it there, a symbol of the sister I used to be, and walked out of the Kensington Country Club with my head held high. I haven't spoken to Audrey or my parents since that day. I heard through the grapevine that Preston filed for divorce shortly after the baby was born. Because of the irrefutable evidence of financial fraud Beatrice had gathered, Audrey's ironclad prenup was invalidated. She walked away with a modest, court-ordered child support stipend and absolutely none of the Kensington fortune she had sold her soul to steal. I, on the other hand, am thriving. I was promoted to head charge nurse of my department. I bought myself a reliable new car, and I sleep peacefully in my tiny apartment every night, knowing I don't owe anyone a single explanation for who I am. Blood might be thicker than water, but peace of mind is priceless. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed your own sister, or would you have walked away and kept the peace? Family betrayal cuts deeper than anything else, but sometimes walking through the fire is the only way to find your freedom. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good dose of karma, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable real-life drama. See you in the next one.